I think we'll get started. People are still entering, but it's kind of slowed down at this point. Again, my name is Chris Leiden. I'm the Vice President for Enrollment Management here at Catholic University. I am joined by our Executive Director of Student Financial Assistance, Mindy Schaefer, and we are going to try and provide you with some quote unquote expert advice about the college admission and college financial aid process, specifically as it relates to Catholic University. Today is October 25th. 7 days from today is November 1. So if you are students who are joined us, if you are parents and you have students who are working through their common applications, we know you're going to have a busy week as far as that's concerned. We are going to use, we're using a webinar format. And so when it comes to questions, you will be putting your questions into the Q&A. And what I'd encourage is if you can let me kind of get rolling on the admission and merit scholarship part, see what we cover before jumping in with a lot of questions. When I conclude my admission and scholarship part, I'm going to start answering questions in the Q&A while Mindy talks. And then when Mindy finishes her presentation, we will then continue to run through questions that have come up that we haven't yet gotten to answer as far as that's concerned. So we'll use a combination of typed answer and also in-person answering as far as that's concerned. Mindy and I may also use the chat function along the way to throw in a link or something that we think would be helpful for you from a resource perspective, but we'll use the Q&A specifically for our questions back and forth. We're going to talk for about 35 to 40 minutes. We're going to cover how Catholic U reads an application, how Catholic U makes merit scholarship decisions, and then Mindy will focus on the need-based part of that process. And hopefully by the time we are done, you have a better sense of how Catholic U goes through the process of evaluating students for admission, merit, and for need-based aid. So as I said, I'm the VP for Enrollment Management. Catholic U is actually currently searching for its next Dean of Admission. So I'm wearing kind of both hats at the moment. And as a result, I will be chairing the Committee on Admission for Catholic U this year. I've been in the college admission profession for, let's just say, a long time. And been here at Catholic now. I'm in my 7th year at Catholic University. So we're going to focus a bit on the two components of how Catholic U reviews an application. And that is really a combination of academic preparation and then the human kind of student personal qualities that help us understand fit and match to Catholic U as far as that's concerned. From the academic perspective, we start with what we do and what we don't do. Catholic University does not consider standardized test scores for admission or for merit scholarships. And so I want to draw the distinction between test optional, which means submit them if you want to, versus tests not considered, which is that whether you submit them or not, they are not seen by the Committee on Admission. We do not see test scores. After May 1, for students who enroll and choose Catholic University, we collect the scores after the fact because we use them for research and some departments like to use them for advising, but they will not be considered at all in the admission and the merit scholarship process. What we do focus on and what years of review has demonstrated to us is that the best predictor of success in the Catholic University classroom is high school performance. And I frame high school performance in 3 contexts. First, what does your high school offer? Second, what did you choose to take? And third, how did you achieve? So for us at Catholic U, we never talk about a GPA without talking about the context of the curriculum in which that GPA was earned. And we think about curriculum both in terms of overall appropriate challenge, but also specific fit to major. If a student is interested in nursing, engineering, biochem, phys, all the STEM areas, mathematics, then there's a particularly higher level of scrutiny to that math science curriculum. Frankly, for all of our students, we care about the humanities curriculum of English and history because the liberal arts core at Catholic U, whether you're a nurse or an engineer, you are going to take philosophy, theology, English, and other core courses over the course of the 4 years. So it is important that all students have a strong background in English and history, but a particular strength then for students in the sciences and STEM areas as far as that's concerned. So we have applications every year from about 1,400 high schools. And I swear there are 1,400 grading scales that we must figure out from that perspective. Because of that, we recalculate all GPAs on a straight unweighted 4.0 scale. An A is a 4.0, an A minus is a 3.7, a B plus is a 3.3, a B is a 3.0, et cetera. If you get an A+, you still get a 4.0. There is absolutely no weighting in our GPA. And the value of that for us is that it means that when we're sitting in committee on admission, we have a common language when talking about student performance. If I say 3.5, everyone on my staff knows that 3.5 is the midpoint between a B+ and an A-. And there's no question about, well, was that a 3.5 on a 4.0 scale, on a 5.0 scale? What does that mean? So we strip out all of that weighting. And if any of you are slightly hyperventilating for fear that then the challenge, of course, is not known, this is why this context is so important. A mathematical approach to create an unweighted GPA, and then a review of the curriculum that frames for us the context of that 3.5. And we have a rating system specific to Catholic University where we then create this scale. And it's based on what does the school offer and what did you as a student choose to take as far as that's concerned. We do not literally count honors or AP courses, because if you come from a rural public high school in upstate New York that only offers AP English, and the next person you read is at a private school with 20 APs and 40 honors courses, the context is different. All we can ask of students is that they take good courses in the context of what their school offers. So we are considering this combination as far as that's concerned, curriculum and performance. Now, college prep, of course, is required. You must be taking college prep. They cannot be below college prep remedial courses to be considered competitive for admission. Virtually all of our applicants are taking college prep classes as a minimum. And then some are taking some combination of honors, AP, perhaps international baccalaureate, IB courses, perhaps dual enrollment courses that are adding additional rigor beyond college prep as far as that's concerned. A typical Catholic U admit is what I would describe as college prep plus. They've not maximized every AP in their school. They've not taken every honors course for 4 years, but they typically have more than college prep. They have some combination of college prep, honors, AP/IB, depending upon their performance and also where their strengths are as far as that's concerned. So we consider these various components. Now, typical Catholic U admit is going to have so the middle 50% will be basically between a B+ and an A-. That means that 25% of our admitted students have somewhere between an A- and a straight A, and 25% of our admitted students have between a B+ and lower. So why do we admit students with less than a B+ average? And there are typically two reasons. The first reason is that the challenge they took throughout high school, the depth of that curriculum, the rigor involved, was so strong that we're not necessarily thrown off by a 3.1 or a 3.15 in a really, really strong curriculum. But the second and more common reason is because students' high school careers are not always horizontal, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5. Students have ups and downs, and particularly in the context of the pandemic, where for the last 18 months, students have had challenges in their curriculum and their delivery of education since March of 2020, we know that we will see an unevenness in a record. So in a truly holistic review, we are not going to have a cutoff GPA because cutoffs, in essence, take the human component away. So a student who starts off, let's say we have two students who both have a 3.15 GPA cumulatively. And the first student got a 2.4 as a freshman and a 2.7 as a sophomore and a 3.2 as a junior and a 3.5 as a senior. We're going to love that progression. We're going to love that junior and senior year performance and the academic maturity that suggests as preparation for college. Conversely, the student who gets a 4.0 as a freshman and a 3.1 as a sophomore and a 2.8 as a junior and a 2.4 as a senior, they might both mathematically be a 3.15 GPA, but that is not going to be as attractive a student to us because that negative progression, particularly that junior and senior year performance, does not predict as well to what we expect the student to achieve in college from that perspective. So those 25% of our admitted students who have less than a B+ average, it's typically in one of those characteristics and areas where that will happen. The other thing, of course, is this curriculum component also means that every student with a B+ average isn't necessarily guaranteed admission. So take two students with a 3.5 GPA, and the first student is taking Algebra 2 as a senior, stopped language after sophomore year, doesn't have a senior science, and is taking English and astronomy and an elective in psychology senior year. It's a 3.5. The next student I see also as a 3.5 is an honors English 4, calculus, anatomy and physiology after biology, chemistry, and physics, a 4th year of history, and French 4. They are both 3.5s. However, the student who has obviously fulfilled the core requirements, the core curriculum throughout all 4 years of high school is a much more attractive student to us. And certainly from that STEM perspective, a student in Algebra 2 as their last math class is not going to be a competitive candidate for engineering, for nursing, for biology, chemistry, physics, mathematics, those types of programs as far as that's concerned. Let me bring this to life for you a little bit so you can have the visual that helps you kind of understand this. So this is our grid. This is our sheet that we recalc every student's GPA on. So as we work across this, you've got 9th grade courses, 10th, 11th, 12th grade courses. If they took a high school level course in 8th grade, in this case, Algebra 1 in 8th grade, Spanish 1 in 8th grade, we don't count the grade, but we note that they're starting sophomore year with geometry instead of Algebra 1 and Spanish 2 instead of Spanish 1. The color here, the 4 golds, reflect honors courses the student took over the 4 years, and the 1 green reflects the AP course. So 4 honors and 1 AP. This student's been pretty consistent, above an A-, straight A in the junior year. However, no science senior year, although the whole is filled with AP Psych, stopped Spanish 3 after sophomore year, and didn't take another college preparatory course in either the junior or senior year in filling that language block. So didn't want to continue with language, but also then didn't pick up some other course. So it's a very high GPA. It's a 3.81 GPA. The student's English performance is 3.67. It's a very solid student, but the curriculum is fine and not spectacular. The second student has basically been really, really strong in English. First 2 years took honors English, and then in junior and senior year took AP Language and AP Lit. So very, very strong in that one area. Only took honors bio as a freshman and kind of carried on from there. In this example, obviously, if this student is interested in the humanities, you've got obviously a student who's done pretty well from that perspective, has gotten to pre-calc, but bio, chem, forensic science, and earth and space would not be the kind of curriculum that we would want to see again for a STEM type major. Again, 2 years of language, filled in the whole 1 year with a half-year course in government, 3 years of history, not a particularly strong senior schedule. Good grades, B+-ish freshman and sophomore year, A- grades junior year. So solid, but again, there are many, many students in our applicant pool and in other applicant pools who've taken on much more challenge from that perspective. We're looking both down the right-hand side here, looking for that progression over the course of 4 years or consistency. And we're looking at the bottom to see performance in each subject area. So we know, again, how they've done subject to subject. And then the last example I'll show is one with much more color. So this student has 8 honors courses, 5 APs in the course of the senior year. Very, very strong student across all 4 years. In this example, it was a regular decision applicant, so there's actually first semester senior year grades are here to be seen as well. And so this student has maxed out in the English curriculum with the 2 APs, was so strong in math that after honors pre-calc as a junior, jumped all the way to calculus BC. There's a calculus AB and a calculus BC. This is the highest level calculus you can take in the AP program. AP Bio after honors bio, honors chem and physics. Human Geo, AP World History, US History, and then Government and Economics, a semester course each. Again, stopped language after sophomore year at honors Spanish 3, and then has 4 years of religion because the student's in a Catholic school from that perspective. So you can see that as the color fills in on the recalc grid, it's a visual to the reader how much challenge the student has. All white, none of these boxes in color suggest straight college prep. And the gold and the green, and if there were an IB course, IB for us comes in as blue, then we see that challenge from that perspective. So I show that to you just as a visual for how a recalc looks for us. And when you have a student who has, in essence, that softer freshman year start, gets better freshman year start, gets better sophomore year, better junior year, better senior year, that's that kind of progression I'm talking about. and we see it both up and down, positively and negatively. And of course, you have the subject matter GPA down here as well. So that's a visual. That's the only thing I'm going to show. Mindy has more extensive slides on financial aid. And so from that perspective, that's how we really account for rigor. Dual enrollment courses have their own color. They're a different color than the blue of the IB. And whether it's AP, IB, or dual enrollment, all of which have college credit eligibility possibilities around them, they're viewed as the most demanding courses a student can take in their high school. And so whether a student gets a chance at a dual enrollment course as a junior or a dual enrollment course only in the senior year, it's still the highest level rigor they can have from that perspective. So that's the mathematical part. That's the transcript. That's our careful review of preparation to succeed in the Catholic University classroom. If that's all we cared about, our committee on admission would not have 15 people, because all I would need is a spreadsheet, sort everyone by GPA, have a column for the strength of curriculum, and then just kind of stop admitting when you get far enough down for how many people you want to admit. We'd have a higher GPA average, but we'd also have no soul, personality, and spirit. It's the human side of the application that matters to us so much from that perspective. And the human part, the color of who our applicants are, comes from essays, recommendations, and activities. Now, we're exclusively a Common App school, so the only way a student can apply to us is through the Common Application. The Common App gives six essay topics that the student can choose from. And then in our member section, we do ask a Catholic U specific essay question as well, to give the student the opportunity to speak specifically to their interest in Catholic U, how we fit their educational plans, what they may want to contribute as a member of our community. We care about writing quality. I was an English major. I don't like to see tons of typos and things like that, but we're not looking for perfection. We are not making kind of English teacher red marks on an essay. But this is the only part of the application where we truly hear the student's voice. What the student writes is the opportunity for us to hear directly from them about some aspect of their background. The 6 Common App topics really can cover any possible subject that a student may want to write about. And of course, the Catholic U statement gives them that opportunity as well. So this is the student's voice. If you are a student, if you're a son or daughter, if your son or daughter is applying next week, the application, the essay may be polished at this point. Proof, just like any school assignment that involves writing. Make it your best work and make sure it's your voice that's coming through from that perspective. Recommendations we require 2. One will come from your school counselor and one will come from a teacher that you feel comfortable writing a recommendation for you. The school counselor rec tends to focus on the student overall, not simply from an academic perspective. The teacher rec is a view of the student in the classroom. Now, we would typically say we prefer recommendations from the junior year or perhaps senior year in an advanced level class. In the context of the pandemic, if your son or daughter had virtually an entire junior year that was virtual and didn't connect with their teachers through Zoom, but they have a teacher from sophomore year who they worked with in person, we are much more flexible about what teacher rec we get. It should be a teacher the student feels confident that they can actually speak well about that student. And remember that the best recommendation may not be from the teacher who gave the best grade. A B- in pre-calculus, where the teacher knows that you showed up for every extra help session and clearly made every effort and demonstrated a real work ethic, can be a much more interesting recommendation than simply someone who gave you a high grade that actually maybe came easy for you. So it's a glimpse into who you are as a student sitting in the classroom. And then finally, activities. Now, it's not the length of the list. We're not looking for serial joiners. We don't need you to be in 10 organizations. We are interested in 3 things: commitment, responsibility, and leadership. And you can demonstrate those 3 things in any number of ways. We do not have a favorite activity. Student government, captain of sports, Eagle Scout, working 20 hours a week, coming home after school and taking care of younger siblings because mom and dad are working, commitment, responsibility, leadership. It can come in any number of ways. As you look at the activities section of the Common App, you want to use that space to articulate how you spend your non-academic time in school, in your church community, in your town community. volunteering, whatever it is that you're spending your time on, we are curious about. And commitment, responsibility, and leadership can come from any number of activities. So when you take those three things combined, the writing, the recommendations, and the activities, that's the human part of the application. And that's the fascinating part in building a community. We have 74 or so majors. We have 100 or so clubs and organizations. Our goal in admission is not to populate some of them, it's to populate all of them. And so this is why among the many, many students in our applicant pool who have a B average or better, we're not able to admit every one of them. And typically it's these human fit components that help for us to dictate for us where we're selecting among students who are qualified to succeed, but we don't have the space to actually be able to admit every single person who could fulfill their program as far as that's concerned. Just like it's not the length of the list of activities, it's also not about the number of recommendations you can get. I used to say in the old days that the thickest file doesn't win, but I haven't read a paper application in about 9 years now, so it's all electronic anyway. The key to extra recommendations is it should be someone who can speak to you, speak about you in a way that's different from we've heard before. I'll go back to the Eagle Scout example. So if your mentor in an Eagle Scout project or a Girl Scout Gold Award project has seen a side of you that you've not had an opportunity to demonstrate in other ways, that could be a great extra recommendation. A service project through your church or community, that person who's leading that could be a great extra recommendation. We're happy to read whatever you send, but more for the sake of more isn't adding value to what we already know about you as far as that's concerned. So that's the admission review. That's what we're interested in from that perspective. When it comes to merit scholarships, we are focusing almost exclusively on academic achievement. We do not do leadership scholarships. We do not do service scholarships. We are awarding merit scholarships based on academic achievement. And the scholarship range will be, roughly speaking, $15,000 to $32,000. If you're B+-ish, good college prep curriculum, you're in that kind of $15,000, $17,000 range. If you are at the top of your class, have taken the most demanding curriculum available to you in your school, then you above that between that A- and straight A, then you're in that $25,000 to $32,000 category. The $32,000 award last year was reserved solely for students invited into the University Honors Program. So the highest scholarship outside of honors came in at $29,000, but honors students got $32,000 because they were invited into the honors program. Now, we have not yet set our fall 22 scholarship budget. It doesn't change dramatically from year to year. So 15 to 32 is a helpful range from that perspective, but it could certainly change by $1,000 here or there as far as that goes. Again, focused on academic achievement. No extra application to be considered for the University Honors Program. We have a scholarship that's called the Parish Scholarship. It is our goal to put a parish scholarship into as many parishes in the United States as we possibly can. We are the National University of the Church, and we are trying to draw students from as many parishes across the US as possible. We are not limited to one per parish, so that if you're on Long Island and you're one of the 80 kids from Kellenberg who apply every year, we are able to do multiple parishes in parishes where there are big student enrollments, but we are trying to spread this out as much as possible. The parish is a $4,000 award, renewable for all 4 years, so it's worth $16,000, and it does stack on top of merit. If you got a $16,000 merit and you received a $4,000 parish scholarship, then you'd have $20,000 total from that perspective. The parish scholarship is specifically for students who are actively engaged in their Catholic parish. It is specific to Catholic University in that way. It is also the only scholarship that a student must raise their hand to be considered for. Now, we make it as easy as possible. In our member section on the Common App, there's a question that says, I think literally, would you like to be considered for the parish scholarship? And it's a yes or no question. If you check no, it just takes you to the next question. If you check yes, you'll get a drop-down box. What is your diocese? What is your parish? Who's your pastor? Contact information. We take it from there. The key is this: if you do not apply for the parish scholarship at the time of admission, when the Common App is submitted, there is no going backwards. There are so many of our applicants who want this consideration that we are absolutely strict on having requested consideration for the Paris Scholarship at the time of admission. We will not go backwards. It's a mandatory question. So you can't skip it. You can't miss it by accident, because if you don't check no or yes, when you go to hit submit on your Common App, it won't work. It's a mandatory question. But if you check no, you will not have the opportunity to change that answer as far as that's concerned. And I can assure you that every year there will be a parent who calls and says, why didn't my son, I always pick on the boys, let's change it. Why didn't my daughter get the Paris Scholarship? And we'll pull up the application and we'll say, because your daughter didn't apply for it. And I can tell you that that leads to a conversation in that household that's out of my hands, but we will not go backwards. We are absolutely adamant that the student must be considered for the Paris Scholarship at the time of admission. So that stacks on as far as that's concerned. There are 5 full tuition scholarships in the freshman class. They are students who are at the absolute top. They are almost all straight A students with the most demanding curriculum their school offers. And they are basically decided by faculty interview. They are so strong academically that numerically you can't slip a piece of paper between them. So there are 2 rounds of interviews, and our faculty actually select the Archdiocesan Scholar winners, because they're basically saying to us from interviews, this is who I want to teach. This is a really interesting student. I want to have them in my classroom. The School of Nursing, which has tremendous generosity from Mr. and Mrs. Conway, Bill and Joanne Conway, has 8 full ride scholarships, tuition and room and board, and they have 12 partial scholarships that will range between $15,000 and $20,000. They are merit-based, but they also consider need. So they are going to be students who are at the top of their class. They are actually also going to be students who will demonstrate financial need to a degree as well. So it's a combination. They're not strictly merit scholarships like everything else I've said, but they are certainly for students. Simply having need is not enough. You must have need-based eligibility and be a very, very strong student as far as that's concerned. I'm going to stop there, take a breath, take a drink of water, and let Mindy go into her presentation. I see some questions in the Q&A. I would ask, for those of you who put questions into the chat, maybe you came in late, please use the Q&A for your questions. We're going to try and save the chat. I'm going to throw some links in there for you as far as that's concerned. I will get to the questions in the chat, but please don't add any more to the chat. Use the Q&A. I'm going to start typing, and I'm going to let Mindy do her thing. And then when she finishes, we're going to kind of live answer what I haven't gotten to, what I haven't typed. If I see a question that comes up a lot, I'm going to hold it until we can answer it live. So Mindy, the screen is yours. The presentation is yours.
Hi. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch over and talk at the same time, but let me get this and share. Okay, so I'm Mindy Schaefer, the Executive Director of Student Financial Assistance, and this is like my favorite time of year. I love talking about financial aid. I've been doing it for 35, I'm going to go ahead and say 35 years. And so I have a lot of passion about it. So I'll try to talk slowly, but I'm giving you some tips and facts about financial aid in general, as well as specific about Catholic University. So without further ado, let's move on. Oops. Well, if I know, why am I not moving? Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, I see what I have to do. All right, so one of the things I like to start with is always talking about the different sources of financial aid. I think oftentimes people don't really have a full understanding or a good understanding about what financial aid is. And I always like to start with that there are 4 sources. So a lot of people know all about federal financial aid, they know about institutional financial aid, but they forget about the other 2, and that's state and private aid. And I always think it's important that we talk about all 4 when we're talking about a financial aid package. So federal aid consists of grants and loans and work programs. And so obviously we're going to talk about the application process in a moment, so I won't jump too far ahead. We have reciprocity. The District of Columbia has reciprocity with quite a few states, particularly the Mid-Atlantic states. And so it's important that you look and see if your state has reciprocity with us, because if you go to Catholic University, then you may be able to get your state aid. And that's important. So not only know that whether it is available, and also what the application process would be. We talked about institutional aid. Chris already discussed the merit aid, and I'm going to talk about need-based aid in a moment and what the application process is for that. And then a lot of students just totally forget about your private local organizations or even your national searches. And so we're going to talk about what are some of the strategies are looking for local, private, and local national scholarships. So let's first talk about federal and state aid. The free application for federal student aid is used pretty much at every college across the country. And so it's important that when you fill this form out that you list Catholic University. But what's nice is you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, because your state agency may require the FAFSA also. So it became available on October 1st. You might have already done it. Many people were there at midnight trying to fill their FAFSA out, which is awesome. But just make sure, just kind of double check and make sure you filled out the 2022, 2023 FAFSA, because when you went into the FAFSA, and I'm going to show you in a moment, excuse me, you have the opportunity to select one of 2 years. Once the FAFSA is completed, it goes, through the Department of Ed's processing system, the Central Processing Center, and you will get an electronic response called an ISAR, Institutional Student Information Record. That's a good opportunity for you to review it, make sure everything looks accurate. It's going to be sent to each school electronically. Now, we don't load FAFSA data until after you've been admitted. So we wait until that happens. So right now, you may have it, but we don't have it yet. The Department of Ed is a little slow too in getting a setup for the 22-23. So we got a little bit of time though. And with the FAFSA, what it does, the reason that you complete this is you're putting income, number of family members in college. And it comes back with what's called an expected family contribution. We're going to talk about this more. I don't want you to get, like, oh, what does that mean? You may have already gotten your expected family contribution if you filled your FAFSA out. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. In addition to completing the FAFSA, you also, if you are applying for state aid, find out what the application process, which I said before. But the reason that I say you need to know about the 4 sources of aid is because Catholic University alone can't cover 100% of need. And so we want you to maximize the amount of financial aid that you get by applying for everything that you might be eligible to receive. So this is just, I started to fill out my FAFSA. I did some screen prints for you. So first I wanted you to see that what you'll get when you log into FAFSA.gov, and that is the official site. Do not go to FAFSA.com, because if you do, then at the very end of the process, it looks exactly the same. They're going to ask you for your credit card. It is the free application for federal student aid, so don't pay anybody. But you can see there's 2022-23 school year and 2021-22. You're not doing that year at all. That's for our current students, our students coming in the spring semester. So just make sure you do the correct year. And because it's an electronic application, you're going to need an FSA user ID, both a student and one parent, to complete the application to sign it, because you're going to be signing it electronically. So you'll see at the bottom of the screen where it says FSA user ID status, that's where you can actually, when it says manage it, you can actually apply for it. I do recommend that you do that first before going to FAFSA.gov. Go to FSAID.gov, and you can actually apply, both the student and the parent. It's pretty easy, but it takes a couple of days for it to authenticate. So if you do it tonight, then maybe by midweek or end of the week, it will be available for signing with no problem. And then you'll see, I more wanted to illustrate just the ribbons at the top, the sections that there are. So there's the student demographic section, there's the school search of what schools you want to get the FAFSA, there's dependency questions. The Department of Education has their own definition of who is an independent student. There's 14 questions. And mostly they need to be 24 or a veteran of the armed services or married or be an orphan or a ward of the court. There's a number of questions, but by virtue of them being 18, that does not make them independent. Oftentimes parents ask that. They go, oh, well, now they're 18. I don't have to include my information on the FAFSA. Nope, unfortunately not. Then there's the parent demographic data, the financial data, parent financial, the student financial, and then sign and submit. So there's not a lot of information, and this is the length of the screen of how many questions. So they really have minimized. If parents, you've done this a couple of years in a row, every year it gets a little smaller. You might even be surprised by, I think, 23, 24, it's going to be down to a couple of questions. We're really looking forward to that. We'll see. Then when we move on, a lot of times I get questions about who is the parent, particularly if it's a divorce or separated situation. This is a section that will help you determine. You cannot split a child in half. Someone had 51 and someone had 49. If it happens to be that it's a divorce situation where the parents have the joint custody, you have to make the decision of who does 51%. So that's the parent that you would include. If you need any help with that, my staff are available to guide you. So if there's any questions, we're available. Telephone, email, however you want to. Video chat is fine. And then the tax information for parents. One of the things I want to bring light to is the IRS, the Department of Education and the IRS have forged a relationship. You can actually link in because you're using 2020 federal tax information for this FAFSA. That's a tax year that's already been cataloged by and filed by the IRS. So you can use what's called the IRS Data Retrieval Tool, or DRT, and link right into your taxes. And then it pre-populates these financial aid questions about finances for parents. Now, not all of them, but it does the majority. It does adjusted gross income, filing status, exemptions, the type of form that you completed, taxes paid, which is important because a lot of times parents don't always pick up the right figure off the very complicated tax forms. The only thing it doesn't do is untaxed income and then income earned from work, which you would pick up from your W-2s. So this might be a really quick and easy way to get the FAFSA done by linking into the IRS for you. One of the things I would caution is that if you are divorced or separated, that wouldn't be an option because your marital status will be reviewed and it looks at that and then it'll say you're not eligible for DRT. If that's the case, it's probably because of your marital status. So don't be concerned. It just means you'll have to pull your taxes out and fill in the information that way. And then one of the other things I like to bring to light is that the fact that parents will get so excited about getting all their information done, they'll totally forget about the student. And while, most of our students, while they're in high school, don't earn a lot of money, you still do need to report it. So make sure that you report your students' filing status. If they earned income, make sure you, indicate that. And if it is a not applicable, you'll have that option of answering it. So don't just leave it blank. Answer the question. And if it happens to be a dollar amount and it's zero, then go ahead and put zero in. And then last, the most important thing is that, you sign, you check off that you agree that everything you've put on the form is factual, and then you make sure that you hit the submit button. So signing and submitting that blue part. Oftentimes I do see people get so excited to complete the form, they forget to hit that submit button. So just want to do a gentle reminder there that that's pretty important. So now we've talked about federal and state, and we talked about the FAFSA of how to complete the FAFSA for federal and state aid. Well, that's what we use for Catholic University need-based aid also. So we've already talked about merit aid, and I just bring that up just to remind you that that's part of a financial aid package at Catholic University. And then the only form that we require for need-based aid is the free application for federal student aid. So occasionally, though, the Department of Education will pick people at random for what's called verification. So that's why, kind of going backwards, the DRT is a really nice thing. If you use the data retrieval tool with the IRS, it helps us not have to collect as much documentation for you. So if you can do the IRS data retrieval, by all means, try to. If not, then be prepared to have your 2020 federal tax returns, make sure they're signed and all schedules available. And we will send missing information letters out, letting the student know that we need additional documentation. And of course, when you get the electronic student aid report, it's going to tell you in the narrative in the front. It's going to say you've been selected for verification, your school's going to ask for additional documents, et cetera, et cetera. In addition to being selected for verification, on occasion, there are questions because the FAFSA does go through a number of data links. authentications. It goes to Social Security Administration to match your name, date of birth, and Social Security. It goes to Homeland Security to match your name and your citizenship status. It goes through Veterans Administration to determine if you are a veteran. It goes to the National Student Loan Database to make sure you're not in default on a student loan, which wouldn't be the case for a new freshman. But it also goes to selective service for male students between the ages of 18 and 25. So occasionally there's some questions. They don't match your citizenship or selective service. And so we may ask for additional documentation about that. So missing information letters will be sent to the email address that you've put on your FAFSA. And well, actually, no, I'm sorry. Let me take that back. Your missing information letter, a letter will go out first to your permanent address, and then after that, we will send it to your email address. And because we don't send missing information letters out until you've been admitted, then it's going to be sent to your Catholic University email. So it'll be really important. As soon as you're admitted, you're going to get information about your login, and make sure that you get your email all set up so that you can get that information. And submit your documents early. The earlier you get it in, the earlier we're going to review your application. We do estimated financial aid packages. So if we know you've been selected for verification, we'll still send you an estimate out so that you can get an idea of what your eligibility will be. But obviously, until everything is complete, you wouldn't get a final financial aid package. So how is need determined? And this is very elementary in terms of this is how everybody determines need. It's important that you kind of know the process. Every college has a cost of attendance. Catholic University has a cost of attendance. That figure is not available yet for the 22-23 school year, since we're still formulating all of our budgets for the 22-23 school year. But that cost of attendance minus your expected family contribution equals need. That is not a dollar amount that you have to come up with that expected family contribution. It is just a figure that financial aid administrators use to determine need. So that's why it's really important that, one, you really review the information on FAFSA and make sure that you've completed it accurately, that you don't leave out any information. And there's not a lot that the FAFSA asks, but it's important that you don't leave blanks, that if it's zero, make sure you put zeros in appropriately. And then we want to provide you with a competitive financial aid package so that you can really, determine what for the best financial fit for you. However, because we don't package loans, that is, we don't package plus loans and commercial loans, it's important that you see that, while you may not get enough financial aid to cover the entire bill, we can talk about strategies, and that is, we can talk about parent loans, plus loans, our deferred payment plan, which actually I'm kind of jumping ahead of my next slide, I think. Actually, let me finish on this one. So institutional aid, because our FAFSA is what we use, and we want all the additional documentation that we may need. We may not need it. If we don't, then your first package is going to be the best package. It's going to be, you'll know as early as possible, which really helps in planning. The deferred payment plan opens up in June, I believe. And so that gives you options of, once you know the final figures, you can really sit down and work with one of my staff to know exactly how much you need to additional funds if you need it. You may not. Maybe you're going to be one of those students who maximizes the state aid as well as private financial aid. Now, the FAFSA does use 2020 financial aid data or tax information, and it's now almost the end of 2021, and by the time the school year starts, it's going to be 2022. So we do recognize that things can change, family dynamics can change, and it could be COVID related. It may not be COVID related. It doesn't really matter. If you've had a change in financial circumstance, there's been a loss of income, medical and dental expenses not paid by insurance, change in marital status since you filed your taxes in 2020. Those are all things that you want to bring to our attention if there happened, death, or serious illness. Those are all things you want to bring to our attention, because we have an appeal process where we recognize that if your 2020 tax information is not what reality is, then we're going to collect some additional documentation and we're going to right size you. And that could net some additional funds. So the appeal process we can't do until we actually have your FAFSA on file and it's been reviewed and verified. That's required by the Department of Education. So right now it's too soon. Believe it or not, we've already had some parents sending us some information asking about our appeal process, but the students haven't been admitted yet. So we need to kind of do it in sequential order. Be admitted, get the FAFSA loaded, make sure it's all accurate, and then certainly we'll have our appeal form updated, and probably by April, we'll have it in the system so that you'll be able to access that and we can counsel you on what additional documents. I've provided what we generally will ask for. We'll want 2021 federal tax returns. So that does mean that, you need to be a little organized for your filing of your taxes. I know that a lot of things happen with businesses and things like that. But in order for us to do any kind of federal professional judgment, it is a federal guideline, we would need to have signed 2021 federal tax returns and all schedules in order for us to see the difference between 2020 and then 2021. And then I have some other documents, untaxed income, last paycheck stub, if it is a loss of income due to unemployment, proof of unemployment if applicable. And then if there's any additional documents that we need, we'll let you know. We also have 2 cost planning tools that I find very useful. I think they're really very powerful tools for students and parents. If you want to see, kind of what will you look like in terms of your financial aid eligibility. The net price calculator has kind of a simulator that is similar to the FAFSA, but what this does is takes our trend data and gives you an idea of where you would fall in that academic merit scholarship, and then how much federal need you may have, as well as institutional need-based aid. So I just think it's a pretty powerful tool, and I'm pretty proud of how this operates. And I think it gives parents and students a good planning tool. In addition to that, we have a planning tool. Once our costs are out and you have your financial aid package in hand, we have a kind of a simulator interactive planning sheet where you put your costs in, you subtract all the aid, even if you have outside aid, outside scholarships, and it gives you what your semester costs will be, since we charge by semester. And that's just always helpful. Again, it can lead you to the next step of maybe wanting to sit down and talk to one of my financial aid staff about what are your options. I just like this picture. I just wanted to include it just because I just think it's exciting. It's an exciting time and everybody should be just so happy. All right. So what are your options? I kind of started to talk about this, and then I went on to, finishing the thoughts about institutional aid, but we do have, we've talked about outside scholarships, the importance of exploring that. FastWeb is a national scholarship search. It's really the most well-known. And this is where I like to talk to people, but we're not talking, so you're going to hear me. But if you were in front of me right now, I say, how many people have done FastWeb? What the student does is creates a profile. They go online, they fill out everything they know about themselves. I mean, from both the academic and personal interests, because it's going to compile all this information about you, and it's going to, kind of send out, if you set your profile to a personal email, and I do suggest that you do that, and make it maybe even one dedicated just to private scholarship searches, because you'll get a lot of information. It then will send you links, matches. We found a match for you. And so, for instance, if you put that you're a bio major, you're going to get a lot of hits. hits on this. So if you, as your years, your semester is progressing and you say, oh, my grade point average is now, 2 percentage points higher. Let me go in and update my profile. And now I've honed in on, I want to do marine biology. So you're going to go ahead and do that. And it's going to help tailor and narrow the search for scholarships, because you might get a little overwhelmed with how much response you get. In addition to that, as I said, it talks about your personal hobbies and things like that. And it's going to, match you up. And it's a great opportunity for you to, not everything is academic. Some of them are just fun. At one point when I was keeping my profile up to date, there was a scholarship. It was a $5,000 scholarship. And all you had to do was write a 1,000-word essay on what's the meanest vegetable. So, you got senior year and you're things are really tough. You've got all these AP classes and you want to just do a little sidebar relief, write an essay, a 1,000-word essay on what's the meanest vegetable, and maybe win $5,000. So that's a lot of fun. In addition to that, we do have a payment plan. We use Flywire, but you don't really need to know the name of it. It's all linked to Enrollment Services website. But the earlier you sign up, the longer you have to pay. The maximum is 5 months of making payments. It's interest free, which is what's nice. Parents come from all different situations, and so sometimes a monthly payment plan works best for their budget. And then you have the parent loan, the Parent Plus loan. That's when a parent can borrow up to cost of attendance for the student. And that works well for some parents who want to, defer the payments while their child is in school. And the interest rate is 6.284% now. It adjusts yearly by July 1. So some people are put off by that interest rate and they go, I have really good credit. I know I can beat that and get better. Well, then they go to commercial loans because they think that that's a better rate. The commercial loan is generally in the student's name because we know students don't generally have credit at 18. They would need a cosigner. But that's where parents have that leverage of having really good credit and can get better rates. We do not have a lender list, which means that if you are searching for commercial educational loans, we would say the best thing to do is to Google private educational loans, and you'll start to see all the top lenders that are out there. Okay. So just briefly, FERPA is the Federal Educational Right to Privacy Act. Once your student is admitted, we still have some options of being able to talk to you, but it does get a little bit more complicated because of this federal law. Your child has privacy rights. And so we ask that the student complete the FERPA release and tell us what we're allowed to give out as in form of information. So it could be grades, it could be financial aid information, the status of the application, how much they owe. Those are all things that are protected. And so we ask that students complete that as quickly as they can so that we can be as helpful as possible, because it does put kind of a rain on the parade when you can't talk to the parent about information that they're like, but I'm writing the check. And I said, I know, I'm sorry. So it's just one of those things that we have to abide by, federal regulation. So here's kind of a recap of some of those websites that I talked about. Make sure you go to FAFSA.gov, because that is the official site for completing the free application for federal student aid, and that our school code is 001437. We do have a law school, so be careful. Don't use the law school's school code. If you do, then it just, we'll have to make you make a correction. Like I said, you'll need an FSA user ID. The student and the parent will need this in order to sign the application electronically. And by the way, this is going to stay with you for all 4 years of college. And parents, if you have other children that are coming up, keep that handy because you're going to use it for them also. It can stay with you for every child that you have going off to college, unless they change the process. But for now, that's how we do it. Our website, financial-aid.catholic.edu. Again, I'm very proud of our website and the wealth of information that it provides. Enrollment Services, they're the ones who handle both FERPA and our deferred payment plan. So if you have information, need more information on that, you can peruse their website. If you want to know more about student loans, both the student aspect as well as parent loans, you can go to studentaid.gov, and that's about all financial aid, but there's a section specifically on loans, on grants, on work programs. And then here are the sites that I talked about for private scholarships. So you have FastWeb, which I talked about. It really is the largest site. It has over 600,000 scholarships in its database, which means it probably encompasses everybody. And then finaid.org will have some, and Scholarships America will have some, as well as scholarships.com. But I think if you go to FastWeb, you're going to find that they are the most inclusive. The guidance counselor is going to be your best bet in terms of local private, and don't discount those, because you may say, oh, it's only a $500 scholarship. But I've seen over the years, interestingly enough, that many of these organizations, particularly because of the pandemic, a lot of money has come in, meaning they were, everybody recognized how difficult it was for our kids going off to college. And so their fundraising efforts were increased, and consequently, they have more than $500. Now, they may not have announced that because they don't know how many applicants they're going to get, but I've seen it happen more than once where a student applied for a $500 scholarship, and they said, oh, we're going to increase it to $2,000 now because we got extra money. So don't discount, because 500 times 4, that's $2,000 if you're applying for some of your local private scholarships in your community. And if, of course, you have questions after this presentation, you can call the office. I've given you all the contact information. You can email. And then if you want to do a video conference, we do that too. And certainly if you're on this beautiful campus, you can come by the office. We are open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Okay. Now, I haven't seen if any questions have been coming through. So Chris, do you want to?
I got it. I'm going to finish typing one thing here.
Okay.
And then I will start feeding you. 1 sec.
Okay. Yeah. He's my, he keeps me organized for this. Covered.
Sorry about that. Okay. So Mindy, for you, a couple of questions about FAFSA IDs.
Yes.
Does the FAFSA application require a student FAFSA ID? We were prompted to apply for a student ID, but have not received it in over a week, and have not been able to start filling out the FAFSA. Can you talk about how that process should play out?
So generally speaking, you actually create your FSA user ID. So it could be the email address that you used. It really depends on how you formatted it. I didn't want to use my email address, but some people use that. Or you could have created something unique like you do when you create your bank. So it should be available, and you should be able to go into FAFSA and use it. Hopefully you wrote all that down. You did some security questions and things like that. What you're waiting for is for them to say that you've been authenticated. There's nothing that prevents you from going into the FAFSA and logging in and doing the FAFSA and signing with it. It's just what happens, it kind of sits in a holding pattern until you've been authenticated. So I think you're fine as long as you know what you created for your FSA user ID.
I don't know whether you said this, Mindy, but there was a question about the profile, and I'm just typing in one box, but did you say that we no longer require the profile? If you have old information from us, we no longer require the profile.
Yeah, we no longer require the profile. You may see it on our website because for spring admits they do, because this is our last year, but it's your lucky day, my friends, the 2022-23 school year, we no longer require the CSS profile.
There was another question about FAFSA ID. Let me grab this one here. 1 sec.
Why does the student need a FSID if the parent is filling out the form?
Yeah, okay. Go ahead and do that one. There's actually one more too I'm looking for. Okay. Go ahead and do that one.
So the reason is because both the student and the parent are signing the FAFSA. And so because remember, there's a section on the FAFSA about the student's information, and it is the student's application, even though I understand the parents are completing at least the parent section, but really the student's supposed to be doing the form you're supposed to be doing it together, and the student needs to sign it also because it's their application.
So here's the last one on forms. I filed my 2020 tax returns. My IRS data retrieval form was not working. I am divorced. Is that why, or is there some other factor?
Yes, that's probably why.
Okay.
Because when you put divorced, they don't know the date of your divorce. Consequently, you could have filed a married filing jointly tax return, and you will not include the other parent. If you're the custodial parent, then you wouldn't be including that, so that they don't even try to put the information in. So if you're divorced and you filed head of household, or, head of household, or just single, well, I guess, it could be single or head of household, then you'll just have to, record your information on there. Yeah, that's one of the, unfortunately, it's not smart enough to know when, even though your divorce may have been 10 years ago, it's not smart enough to do that.
What's one other one? I'm just going to pull up, and then I'm going to start doing a few. Oh, is money from informal jobs, babysitting, dog walking, considered income if a student does not file a tax return?
That is a really good question. And I've been in this business for 35 years, and I'm going to tell you right now, the IRS says that you're supposed to claim it. I am not a tax accountant. And so what I would say to you is use your best judgment. But if you are not claiming it as earned income, and it is a minuscule amount of money, then please don't report it. And if there's a department of ed person on this call, I'm going to probably be in trouble. But we have to, what happens is that when you have income from dog walking and from babysitting, you are a business person, you are an entrepreneur, and will have to file a Schedule C for your business and show your gross earnings minus your expenses. So if you want to do that and be legitimate, by all means do that. But if you're earning, a couple $100s from babysitting and dog walking, then no, please don't.
Okay, I'm going to jump through some now. How does course rigor GPA recalculation take into account COVID impacts? And certainly when we're talking about impact, we understand that availability of schedule is also part of this as well. In the Common App, there's a place for students to write. There's actually a COVID question on the Common App that is not required, it's optional. But if students have had disruption to their academic experience from COVID, couldn't take classes, labs didn't work the right way, et cetera, you can use that COVID statement to articulate those kinds of things. And it's also helpful to make sure the school counselor notes this as well in his or her rec, because it's kind of a nice validation of that perspective as well. But when I said that we understand that GPAs could have been affected from COVID over the last 18 months, so too might have been the availability of courses or courses that a student could take as far as that's concerned. So that is that question. Question about legacy. Yes, we love to have students continue their family tradition at Catholic University. Mindy, did you mention the legacy grant?
I did not.
Good. Let me get into this then. So first of all, from the standpoint of legacy, we want to see students continue their family tradition at Catholic U. Legacy will never work a miracle. An unqualified student for a program will not get in solely because of family connection and legacy as far as that's concerned. Among all those B students, among all those factors that we're considering, a student who has a family tradition at Catholic U, it can be a tip factor, but it will be a tip factor among qualified students where we're rounding out who we're able to admit. It cannot work a miracle. No special talent. If you're interested in musical theater and you have a fabulous audition and you're a C- student in English for 4 years, you're not going to be admitted because you can't handle the core curriculum. So a tip factor can exist, but it will not override the inability to be successful in the curriculum. I was asked to describe the selection process for the honors program. And so it gets back a little bit again. These students are in at the top of their class. There are about 12% of the entering class is invited into the honors program. It's 100 to maybe 108, depending upon the year as far as that's concerned. And the University Honors Program is a more rigorous consideration of our core curriculum, particularly the first year experience. And then there are 6 honors tracks that students have the opportunity to choose from once they're in the honors program. So again, overall achievement is going to be exceptionally high, higher than an A- average. It's closer to a straight A average than it is to an A- average. And even if you want to be a nurse or an engineer, there is a particular emphasis for us on the English and the history grades because the honors program is dealing specifically with your core curriculum. And freshman year, that is anchored by the 2 philosophy, the theology, and the English course that students take. So it's the same basic consideration as I described for admission, but it's outside of those 5 full tuition scholarships that we award. Selection into the University Honors Program is the most selective thing that we have to select students for. So it is very, very competitive from that perspective. A word about deadlines. Our early action deadline is November 1. Our early decision deadline for students who have Catholic U as their top choice is also November 1. Those students will receive their admission decision and their merit scholarship award, and if they are invited into the honors program before December 15th. Our regular decision deadline is January 15th. We offer a second early decision deadline, early decision 2 on January 15th for students who find a first choice a little later in the process. Students here within the first 10 days or so of March about admission, merit scholarships, and again, the University Honors Program. I want to be very clear. There is no competitive advantage to when a student applies when it comes to any form of our money. We assure that all students are treated 100% equally for merit scholarships for consideration for the University Honors Program, whether they apply early or regular. Students should apply for admission when they are most confident that their application reflects their best work on the essays and everything else. And if their senior year they feel is very important because of some ups and downs during the first 3 years, regular decision could actually be a better choice because it assures that we will see the entire first semester of a student's senior year. At early action, we often, but not always, see first quarter. At regular decision, we always see first semester. And there was a question earlier as well about second semester. Second semester only comes into play if a student is on our waiting list and we're making that decision in April or May. And it comes into consideration for students who've chosen to enroll, because every student who deposits by May 1, when their final transcript arrives, it is reviewed. And we expect to see the same performance, relatively speaking, that we saw for the first 3 to 3.5 years when we see a final transcript. And it doesn't happen every year, but I've again doing this a long time. There are years when we must write to a student and say that what you did after we admitted you is not consistent with what you did when we said yes to you. So it is very important that students understand that high school is a 4-year experience, and the good work that gets them admitted is expected to be completed right through to graduation. And let me assure you that is not a Catholic U answer, that is a college admission answer. Question about how the parish scholarship is chosen. It's chosen by students' engagement with their parish. The money is from Catholic University. This money does not come from other sources. This is part of Catholic U's $71 million commitment to merit and need-based aid for undergraduate students. As I said, as long as we have the contact information from the diocese, the parish, and the parish and the pastor of the parish, we do all of the follow-up work. If priests would like to write proactively a letter of recommendation, they are certainly willing to do so. Recommendations from people who are not in the school, they can either be sent to the guidance office and uploaded to the Common App, or they can be sent directly to CUA admissions at cua.edu. They can send them directly to our Catholic University email address, and they will be uploaded to a student's file. So for some extra recommendations, it is easier to simply send it by email, to have the person send it by email to our email address, then bring it to the school, have the school uploaded, but we can handle it from either perspective as far as that's concerned. Got that one, got that one. Mindy, are you putting the link into the chat for the PowerPoint?
I didn't, but
So if you will do
well,
that.
wait a minute. I don't know where it is. I mean, I have it on my personal drive. I think you've done this for me in the past. Who's put it up on?
I think Jake may have, or Josh. Yeah, I've not done it for you. Anyway, we are going to send out, this is being recorded, so we are going to send out a link either tomorrow or Wednesday to everyone who registered for it. So you're going to get it from that perspective, but typically Mindy's slides are also somewhere on her website, and if she can figure it out in the next little while, she'll throw that up there for you.
I don't know how to do that. Josh, if you're out there.
If Josh is still there, if he has the address and he could throw it in the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, I don't know that we have it up on our website. That's why I just have it in my personal drive. So I need to figure out. Sorry, I have a technical person who helps me with this, folks.
Question for you, Mindy.
Yes.
Net price calculator requires parent investments and assets of parents held in siblings' names. Do I remove siblings from our investment? FAFSA requires parent investments to include all dependents.
Let me read this again. Requires parents.
It's about halfway down.
Yeah, held. I'm sorry, do you remove? I don't really understand the question. So if you have unified if your child has a bank account and you're on it, then yes, you would remove that. However, if there are investment like a 529 plan, yes, they all, I'm sorry, I had to think about it. Yes, they all get removed from the siblings if they are their accounts, investment accounts. But if you have something that's not in like a unified minor, uniform minor, and it's just your funds and you're like have it earmarked and you're like, I'm going to use this for retirement or I'm going to use this for college savings, then you would, unless they're specifically in those types of accounts, you would have to include them then. Okay. I'm still trying to figure out. Get this.
I'm putting the general Catholic U email address into the chat. There was a question about that, so that is now in the chat. Couple of questions I'm going to answer live while Mindy is checking on something else. Question about applying again if denied early action. So at early action, we will make one of three decisions. We will offer admission, we will defer to regular decision, or we will deny. If we deny, it is a final decision that we believe that even seeing more of senior year will not be enough to change our consideration of academic preparation. If we believe senior year can be a difference maker, we will defer to regular decision. We'll get that first semester transcript. The student will then hear again in March. So admit, defer, deny are the options at early action. If you apply early decision binding, it's admit, deny. Since you've raised your hand and said first choice, we do not defer you. We either admit you or deny you. If you apply regular decision, your choices are admit, waiting list, or deny. Students who are waitlisted may hear in April, but depending upon our deposit flow, may not hear until May. There was another question here. So the question is, so my daughter will know everything on December 15th, everything except being nominated for the Archdiocesan Scholarship, because that's a separate review process. So a student on December 15th will know admission, their merit scholarship, and the honors program. And then we have a separate group that will meet basically between December 15th and then the holidays, and will identify the nominees for the first round of interviews. Nominees find out typically within the first 10 days of January. The interviews take place. The finalist interviews for the early action group take place this year. They're scheduled for, I believe it's February 18th. And then we repeat that process again with regular decision and the finalist interviews will take place on April 1. We intend these interviews to be in person. However, if you're coming from a distance and it's not, not possible to travel on that day, we will arrange for Zoom interviews for the finalists, but it is our preference that they are done in person. Got that one. Mindy, 529 ESA, does it get removed from parent accounts?
529, you only remove it if it's not held by you. So if it's held by someone other than you, but if you hold it, then yeah, you have to include it. So sometimes a grandparent will have the 529 plan and you don't have to include it then. Applying for early. Okay, I'm looking at what else do we have.
I'm gonna go back to the chat and see if I've missed anything in the chat while you.
Josh did put in the link to the PowerPoint. He did it in the chat, not in the Q&A.
That's good.
Yep. You see
That's
that?
good. All right, let me get over to the chat here. That's that. Well, I see some thank yous, Mindy, so that's good. Got that, got that. So a word about private scholarships. Mindy, did you talk about what happens when a student brings a private scholarship?
I didn't. I'm gonna finish this chat and then we can talk about private
Yeah, I'll
scholarships.
jump into that then.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if a student has money coming in from an outside source, and so if they have no need-based aid, it absolutely simply stacks on top of a merit scholarship they have. So we never reduce a merit scholarship because a student has funding from an outside source. On the need-based side, we do have to be aware of need-based eligibility. So if a student brings in, let's say, a $5,000 outside scholarship, and usually they're smaller, they're 500, 1,000, things like that. But if you brought in a $5,000 outside scholarship, the first thing we would do is see if there was any need-based eligibility that we had not yet met. And in essence, that money would first go toward that. The second thing we would do is if the student had what we call self-help, either a loan or work study, we would reduce loans and work study. Now, the federal loan is $5,500, work study is typically around $2,000. So a student has to bring in a really extraordinary amount of outside money before we actually get to having to take away need-based funding as far as that's concerned. It happens, Mindy, does it happen more than 2 or 3 times a year? Does it happen 2 or 3 times a year?
I'm sorry, say it again because I was answering a question.
How often someone brings in so much outside scholarship that you have to reduce need-based aid?
It doesn't happen that often, but let me do one clarifying statement here. Sometimes if we have competing tuition, so if it's a scholarship that covers tuition and we're covering tuition and it exceeds tuition, then we end up having a little bit of an overage. So if your donor is very specific and says it can only go towards this, and we have to abide by what your donor says. So obviously having scholarships that are flexible that can cover tuition fees, room and board are the easiest to administer because absolutely no adjustments, well, I shouldn't say no adjustments, no adjustments generally would happen because as Chris alluded, yes, in most cases, there's still unmet need for the student. The timing is very important too, because sometimes donors are very late in sending the money, and we do have a form that we ask the student to fill out if they know that they're going to be getting money. It just hasn't come in yet, because it helps us do a coordination early so that we can counsel you the best way possible. So you know all the funds that are coming in, even if the check isn't physically here yet. So that's important.
Got a question about ROTC. So the question is whether ROTC scholarships affect merit, and Mindy just spoke to this to some degree. Our academic scholarships are tuition-only scholarships. So if a student received a 3 or a 4-year ROTC full scholarship, those dollars would wipe away the Catholic University scholarship. However, when students receive an ROTC full scholarship, Catholic University has made the decision to offer for these students only students on a full ROTC scholarship. We will cover their room and board because the Army, Navy, Air Force has chosen to commit all their tuition dollars and provide all their tuition. We will then cover their room and board. It is the only room and board scholarship that we offer, and it is only for students who receive a full ROTC scholarship. Looking to see if I've missed anything. Mindy, can you explain what happens when you're applying to more than 10 schools? I know you submit the FAFSA and then you kind of go back and take schools out and do it again. Could you walk through that?
Yeah. No, I didn't discuss that. So yes, so and don't be alarmed, but the Department of Ed only gives you 10 slots. Gosh, 10 slots. But if you're applying to 11 schools, after the FAFSA is processed, you go back in. Now, remember, we've already gotten it. All your schools, all 10 schools have gotten it, but you're going to go in and delete one and add your 11th school. It doesn't mean that the school hasn't gotten it because they already got it and it'll stay. But the Department of Education only gave 10 slots. So you'll have to delete one school and then put in that 11th, or delete 2 schools and put in 2 more. So yeah, that's what they require.
Great. I'm throwing a link in to for one particular parent with a question. So if you see something else you can grab for a second, I'll be right back to it. Can you get both financial aid and merit money? Yes. Now,
Yeah.
there are some students who, through the admission process are awarded a merit scholarship and have no need-based eligibility. There are students who are not awarded a merit scholarship, but through Mindy's process will have need-based eligibility. And some get a merit award, but the level of need-based eligibility they have means that we can put grant aid on top of that merit aid. So yes, it is possible for students to get both merit and need-based money. How long does it typically take the FAFSA to get, after submit, how long does it take for it to get from the processing center to us?
So because I talked about how we don't load them, our system won't allow us to load FAFSAs until you're in our student information system, which is called Cardinal Students. Typically, that's almost within a couple of days. The FAFSA will be processed and it will be sitting in a waiting, let's just say a staging area, probably within 48 to 72 hours. So depending on what if you've done your FSA user ID and it's already been authenticated, then you're good to go.
Great. Question about 5-year programs. So Catholic U has one undergraduate program that is required 5 years. It's our dual degree architecture engineering program. And while typically Catholic U funding is for 4 years or 8 semesters, if you are part of the 5-year program, then yes, we will cover that 5th year. Any merit scholarship carries for the 5th year. Any need-based eligibility carries for the 5th year. That is specific to that program alone. It's the only undergraduate dual degree program. If your son or daughter engages in a 4+1, which is 4 years undergraduate, and then the +1 is a master's degree, the undergraduate scholarship covers the 4 years, and your graduate program would, if they offer scholarships, your scholarship in the 5th year would be based on that graduate program scholarship budget. You would not get a 5th year of undergraduate if your +1 is a master's degree. One sec here. Oh, Mindy, did you just answer the Conway question?
I did.
Okay, I'm putting the link for anyone else who's nursing. I'm putting the link about the Conway scholarships into the chat. Can you start the law school during your senior year? Yes, Catholic University has a 3+3 program, so that in your what should be your senior year, you are actually in your first year of law school. And so in that case, your 3 law school years are all covered by law school scholarship, you're eligible for law school scholarship. In essence, your first year of law school transfers back to complete your undergraduate program, but you are considered a law school student in that 4th year. And so you actually forego your senior year scholarship because you're going to get treated by the law school from their perspective. Question came into the chat about athletic scholarships. Catholic U is Division III. We are not allowed to offer scholarships based on athletics. All of our funding, merit, and need-based aid is athletics blind. We are not able to use athletic talent as a factor because we're a Division III school. Okay, I'm seeing thank yous. I hope that means we've done a pretty good job here. Just a quick thing about early action and first quarter. We look at first quarter when they are available. However, not every school is able to provide a first quarter transcript for us. So if we only have 6 semesters, if we only have the first 3 years of high school, we must have the senior schedule, but we do make early action decisions without first quarter grades. And if we feel the first semester grades are essential to the decision, we will defer to regular decision. I think we are at that point, Mindy.
Okay, good.
Most of the open things I see are kind of thank yous at this point, which is great to see. Again, on the law school, you walk with your class. At the end of 4 years, you graduate with your class because your first year of law school transferred back to complete your undergraduate degree. But in essence, then at the end of your 4th year, you only have 2 years of law school left to complete. Thank yous, thank yous, thank yous. Thank you to, in case you didn't see that number, 221 students / parents / whatever is out there who joined us tonight. November 1 is a week away. If you're ready to submit your application, we're happy to see it by November 1. And if you need more time, we're happy to see it after the January 15th deadline. And I'll close by simply saying again, no competitive advantage for merit scholarships or for need-based aid under early or regular. You will get full consideration for everything. You should apply when you're going to have your best application put together. In the chat is the link to the admission counseling staff. The admission counseling staff is a great resource for your questions. And if you have questions that are beyond their knowledge base, they will track the answer down for you or make arrangements for someone else to follow up with you as far as that's concerned. Students, we hope your senior years are going well. We hope your college application process is not wiping away the joy of being a senior. Parents, deep breaths. If this is your last one to go through the college process, you can have a toast somewhere down the line. And for the rest of you, best wishes tonight and good luck for the completion of your senior year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night. All right. Okay, how do I get out of here?